So today, my plan is to walk you through the concepts of hybrid mobile app development and then dive into Ionic frameworks, right? So that is where I hope to take this session today. All right. So let's start. So how many of you? I just before I start, right? I want to see a show of hands on how many of you know about mobile app development. Any experience in mobile app development? Okay. So how many of you have any experience or even heard about hybrid mobile app development? Anyone actively doing PhoneGap or any of these frameworks? There are a few. Okay, so good. And how about JavaScript? Obviously, there are a few people. Right. Okay. Good. So can you all hear me? Good. All right. So the way the session is planned today is basically we'll walk through these basic concepts. So what are your choices in developing a mobile app today, right? And why do you choose one versus the other, right? Then we get into why hybrid mobile app development matters now. Why are we talking about it now, right? Then we will get into the basic concepts of PhoneGap. Then we will jump into AngularJS a little bit. I'm not going to explain anything about AngularJS or the concepts. It's a topic on its own. That was the first session I took here, as a matter of fact. And then we'll get into Ionic framework. The most important part is we'll get into a live demo. I'll try to do a live demo of building a sample app and distributing that, right? So that way you get a feel of how to do this and how to at least get started with hybrid mobile app development. And then we'll see where this whole thing is going in terms of technology. So before that, I want at least few of you to download an app called Ionic View. Can you go ahead and download that? At least some of it, right? It's available both in Android and iOS. Ionic View, right? Just you might have to create a account and then just download that. Whether anyone already have Ionic View installed? No, that's fine. I'll tell you why we need it towards the end of this. So you have enough time. Take your time and download. There is no urgency. All right. So I'm going to start this session at a very negative note, right? So this is what in 2012 Mark Zuckerberg said. The single biggest mistake they did was to invest or trust too much in HTML5, right? So he clearly says Facebook's mobile strategy relied too much on HTML5 rather than native applications, and they migrated from HTML5 and then they went into building it natively, right? So obviously you might be asking, I'm taking a session on hybrid HTML5 and why am I showing this? I'll tell you why. My target for today's session is by end of the session, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you still think is correct? I mean, it's very hard to say is wrong, but no, I'll still ask you that. And ultimately, enable you to go ahead and build a hybrid mobile app easily. So keep this in mind. What Facebook as a company who has mobile apps in all platforms think about HTML5 development in 2012. All right. So what are our choices right now in terms of mobile app development? This might be redundant information for a lot of people, but I just will browse through this topic. So basically, first one is native. You can build a native app in individual platforms. Then you can definitely build a web-based application. And then comes the hybrid. Now, why we choose one versus the other? With the native, the thing is it's a platform specific, right? So as a company, if you need to build 3 or more, for 2 or more platforms, you need individual teams, you need to invest a lot of time. But many companies still go with native, like what Facebook said, they go with native. They have the team, they have the resources to do that one. Then there is no way to match the performance of, it's really hard to match the performance of a native app, right? So that is the single main reason why people go with native application development, right? But if you stack the other parts, it's all negative, right? It is expensive, it is time consuming, you need to have a much larger team, right? You have to write the code and think about it. The application development is not one time thing. You develop your application, then your platform changes, you change the version, iOS 7 becomes 8, becomes 9, then something crashes, you have to build. So you need to sustain a team. The life cycle cost of an app built in native is way higher than what you build in web technologies, right? So that is why this tendency for people to do that. That's one. Two, mean, the second option is basically do it in web. Now, how do you build a web-based mobile application? You don't have to build anything. You just open up a browser, call the link, and if you make that application responsive enough, you already have a mobile-based application running, right? So the beauty of this is you don't have to have a team, you don't have to invest. But the biggest challenge is what? You have very limited access to native functionalities. I mean, that is the whole reason why you need a mobile app. You need to access camera, you need to access the mobile, the microphone or accelerometer. You have very limited access to any of these features when you use a web. Now that is the dilemma for a company or a developer, right? Okay, I need to do it fast, but I need all these features. Web has not scaled there. It's not yet there. That's a key. It's not yet there. It might come there because it's quite, I mean, it's not easy, but let's say W3C said, we are going to have a tag called camera, right? And if all iOS and Android guys wrote their code such that if say they see this camera and turn on a camera, then that's possible, right? So I think there will be a time when this line is going to get blurred sooner than later. So that is this developing in web. The third is hybrid. That's what we are going to talk about today. Now this is the best of both, right? So you basically get a platform independent application, right? Or a platform independent development platform. It uses the technologies which you already know. You don't have to learn C, Objective C, or you don't have to go for Java or I don't know what you use for Windows. So you don't have to learn individual things. Whatever you know, you can scale. But on the flip side, there's a compromised performance, right? Your performance of your applications are definitely going to be compromised. I mean, again, you have a faster development cycle. And the simplest way to build a hybrid mobile app, anyone? Take a web view, open your browser inside a web view, you launch it as an app. Have anyone done that? Right. So you can create an app, has nothing, just what the first page is, you would say it's a web view. So it looks like an app. When you click on this inside the web view, it is URL. It's calling your, for the user, it's not like opening a browser and typing a link. For the user, you can download this app. But this app has a hard-coded URL inside it. And if my understanding is correct, Uber is actually a web inside a web view. So based on my research and from what I've read, Uber app is entirely web and it is sort of a web view app. But they might have done it way better than, so they have the resources and teams to do it. But so it's the simplest way. So you can do that in like 2 hours. Build one. You take, set up your Android, create a web view, put it in there, you're ready to go. The thing is, you won't see the browser bar. It's all inside this web view. Correct. So that's the basic, easiest platform hybrid mobile app you can build. And that, but again, the problem is then you have to build for different platforms, right? The web view for Android is different from what you do for iOS, so you'll have to have 3 different code bases for it. Right. So now we'll jump into what you call Apache Cordova. Right. Anyone know about Apache Cordova or PhoneGap? Right. So what Apache Cordova is basically, so this is a concept you have to wrap your head around. For a first-time developer who's trying to learn about hybrid mobile app, this is where you get stuck, right? So you need, like I said before, you need to access camera. As a mobile developer, you need to access camera or microphone or something. So how do you do that? And you are equipped only with what? JavaScript, right? You know only JavaScript and CSS and HTML5. So how do you access that camera? What are your options? That is where PhoneGap comes into picture, right? So think about it like 3 different units. You have your native, you have your web. There has to be a bridge which connects your native to web, web to native, right? So you need something to connect these two. That is where PhoneGap comes into picture. So I'll give you an example. PhoneGap as a library, when you install PhoneGap or you're setting up your environment for PhoneGap, it exposes all these native features. When I say native features, you know what I'm talking about, right? All these native functionalities as JavaScript functions to you. So imagine you can call, in your JavaScript itself, you can say camera.open as a JavaScript function and a callback, right? What would happen? That is exactly how you do now, right? You say camera.open in JavaScript, and you want iOS or Android to understand this command. How does that happen? PhoneGap in between will take this JavaScript, convert it into machine understandable, which is in this case iOS or Android, and that is how you make phone. It's a platform independent application. Are you guys clear? If anyone, because if you need to understand this concept too. Otherwise, the rest of the session you will be lost. Because rest of the session you will think it's all magic happening. It's sort of magic, right? So you have Cordova for iOS, Cordova for. It's not just one. Because you can write your own stuff, right? For that matter. So what Cordova gives you is a basic list of functionalities which is exposed as, which can understand. And the way they have built is using plugins. So everything is a plugin. So they give you the basic functionalities as plugins, right? So I mean, first it supports almost all platforms. So if you go to Cordova site, you can see it supports iOS, Android, Windows, BlackBerry, blah blah, anything. For each of them, when you build, you can build it for that platform. Then it creates a specific folder structure for each of this. Then you can deploy it, right? So it's extremely simple in that sense. But each of these functionalities are exposed as plugins, right? Now, Cordova gives you default plugins, which comes packaged, which is PhoneGap, camera, battery status, whatever you need. Basic things are there, and it is an open community, so it's an open source thing. So you can create your own plugins as well. So this is sort of a confusing area. What happens is when you go and do this, right? If you don't pick the right plugin which has a good community support and it's been supported properly, you will run into issues, because every time your native platform upgrades or changes, your plugins have to be improved. It has to be upgraded as well. If that plugin is not properly maintained, you will, like we had a lot of issues when we migrated from one version to the other, and then you get stuck there. Clear? So choosing a plugin, you should be very careful. Don't go and pull any random plugin. If you the best case is pick the plugins which PhoneGap supports. Otherwise, go do your research and pick what matters. Right? I'll give you some examples like what we ran into in many cases. There was one plugin we used, and what happened was we upgraded PhoneGap. The latest stable version of PhoneGap came. We upgraded PhoneGap or Cordova in that matter, and then application failed because one of those plugins we used was not supported in that case. Right. So you have to be very careful when you do that. Now there is this eternal question everyone asks: what is the difference between PhoneGap and Cordova? Right? So it's one and the same in the sense. So it's basically PhoneGap is a distribution of Cordova. PhoneGap is what Adobe does. Cordova is by Apache. Cordova is an open source engine which is open source thing which you can take and make your own. So I can build a Perfomatix something, right, and then distribute it as my hybrid platform. You can use Cordova as the root, and then exactly like people use WebKit. Google used WebKit and made it Chrome, right? Apple used WebKit and made it as Safari. So that's the same concept here. So PhoneGap is a distribution of, it's not the only, it's a distribution of Cordova, right? So which one to pick? It's if you use Adobe's PhoneGap, the advantage is they give a lot of other supporting build tools and management tools and a lot of other things. Some are paid versions which you can use their functionalities. PhoneGap is, Cordova is totally open source. Right. So till now we have covered the basic concepts of PhoneGap and Cordova and hybrid. Any questions till now? Do we have any? No. All right. So next thing we need to understand here is about AngularJS. Now, why am I talking about AngularJS and a hybrid mobile application thing, right? So you'll get that in the next slide. So, what is AngularJS? Anyone working on AngularJS here? Okay. So AngularJS is nothing but a JavaScript framework, right? It's a very powerful. It has a huge community. It is by Google. right? So if you're developing web application specifically, that's a keyword. If you're developing a web application, you can use AngularJS. AngularJS is not the only framework out there. There are a bunch of other frameworks, Ember, Backbone. There are a lot of other frameworks, but you can use AngularJS. Now, the good thing with AngularJS is, first one is it's by Google, right? But the biggest problem with AngularJS was not thought of or developed as a mobile friendly framework. It was a web, it is a framework for web application development. So as a company or as a developer who is really used to uh, AngularJS, and I want to develop a mobile app, what are my choices? I don't have a choice at this point, right? So I have to learn either something new or go back to using plain old JavaScript and then include PhoneGap and work with that. So my choices are limited. So for a so the way as a developer I would love to have another version of AngularJS which is mobile friendly, right? Or which has some mobile features, and that is what Ionic framework is, right? So this is one catch. If you want to actually go deep into Ionic framework, you will have to learn AngularJS. If you don't know AngularJS, it's going to be hard, right? I mean, I don't want people to walk out of the session right now, but the point is you need to know a little bit of AngularJS, and there is specific advantage of doing that, right? So like it's a very vibrant community in AngularJS, and it is a lot of there are I think almost I think most of the applications, new ones, established ones, people are using it, and there is another Angular 2 coming out, and so I highly recommend learning that. Then you can use Ionic framework. But for today's session, you're fine. I mean, I'll cover the basics. So the idea is once the end of the session, you will know how to build a basic thing. Then you can learn and then start from there, right? So we'll now jump into Ionic framework. So this is what Ionic is. Ionic is Cordova plus Angular. Now this is where we have to take a pause and think. Can you all wrap your head around what this concept is right now? I told about JavaScript, HTML5, then I talked about PhoneGap, then I talked about Angular, and now I'm mixing all together, right? It's sounding a little complicated right now. You need to know too many things to build a simple app. If you know Android, you don't have to know this, right? So I'll explain how it all works. As a web developer, you know one or the other Java, your HTML technologies. As a matter of fact, you don't need AngularJS to develop a mobile app. If you a hybrid mobile app, and if you're going with Cordova and you want to build a hybrid mobile app, you don't need AngularJS, right? Well, how do you build the most simple hybrid mode? One is WebView. Forget about that. That is again platform dependent. I want to build something, write once. So this is the concept: write once, deploy anywhere, right? So that is what so my code base can be built into iOS, Android without much effort, right? So how do you do that? Not WebView, no, is not the answer. What is the answer? You download PhoneGap and set up a PhoneGap environment, right? Or a Cordova environment. Then you simply write a HTML, JavaScript HTML, you build it, distribute it, and that's it, right? Then why are we talking about all these frameworks here? Like any complicated web application, you need some sort of a framework to structure your application, right? So that is where that issue starts coming in. That is where you see a need for a framework coming in. It's easy to build a hello world. If you go to Cordova site, every developer can build a hello world in probably 10 minutes and build an Android app, right? It's that easy, but that's not the real life. You have a lot of API calls, you will have a lot of third-party integrations, you have push notifications, God knows what. You have a lot of things that's coming down the line. So you need some framework to support all those business logics, so that data bindings and integrations. That is where the need for a framework comes, right? But again, like I said, Angular is not a mobile, at least. So what people at Ionic did was they took Angular because it was a very famous, very well supported framework, and then the only thing they built was CSS and the JS part of it. How many of you have used? I'll explain this. How many of you have used Bootstrap? Right. So what is what is Bootstrap? I won't call it a framework. What is Bootstrap? So what does Bootstrap and how does Bootstrap help you as a web developer? Good, responsive is one. Then see, when you develop any application, right, there are certain things which are repeated over and over and over again. You need a header, you need a menu, you need a footer, you need. As a developer, you have to keep writing, rewriting this code every time, right? And then, like I said, using media queries, there are certain standard practices which you don't want to keep redoing as a developer, and that is where Bootstrap comes into picture, right? So Bootstrap gave you a very powerful CSS, right? It started as a CSS, nothing else. Then they introduced modal and they introduced new things, which are all JS components, right? Which you could use there. Are you all following me? All right, good. So it's again. So the point is, it's a CSS styles given to you for optimized for what? Web. Then you can use, as a developer, you can use Bootstrap along with AngularJS or Ionic, sorry, AngularJS or Backbone.js or Ember.js. That's your wish. You can use that. That's exactly what Ionic is. Ionic is nothing but a set of mobile optimized CSS. So there are certain things which you always do as a mobile developer, irrespective of what you work on. One is what? Slider menu. This is the new trend, right? Or a tab in the bottom. Infinite scroll. Infinite scroll is not a CSS. I'll get that. But the slider menu, the tabs, logo. I mean the list, the page transitions. There are a bunch of things that, as an iOS developer and an Android developer, you do, right? There is a modal. There's an action sheet which comes out in the bottom, right? So if I don't need Ionic for all those, I can build my own. But every time, what I have to do, I have to keep building this for every project I'm involved in, right? So Ionic, what they did was they generalized this exactly like Bootstrap did for web. Ionic did for mobile. Bootstrap has a default header which you can use. Same way, this comes with the default, slider menu, right? And Bootstrap also gave you what? A lot of templates. Basic. You can start with a blank one. You can start with 3-section, 3-column. There are people who are not familiar with Bootstrap. I'm sorry. So the idea is this, right? So Ionic also gives you a lot of templates to start your project. So to kickstart a project, it is very, very, very easy. And I'll show you once we start the demo, like how easy it is. Hopefully my laptop cooperates with me. So do you all follow right now what it is, each component? I mean, if you don't understand this, doesn't make sense. So we have to spend as much time as possible to make sure you follow this. So it's why Cordova is there, right? That is what makes this hybrid. That enables what? Build one, deploy many, right? That is what this is. Angular is replaceable. You can use anything in respective of that. Doesn't matter. Clear, right? Then then you put, I should have put one more, like plus CSS here. That part is missing. So you don't have to use Ionic CSS. You can write your own CSS for that matter. Clear? Everybody, can we move forward? All right. So now it's quite easy. Now I think the session is almost over. Now if you understand this, rest is as a developer, right? It takes you some time to wrap this concept, because either if you're a native developer, it takes a little bit of time to understand why each component. Setting up a platform is quite painful. It took me at least some time to realize why I need each of this, why I need this. And fortunately for me, it was a natural progression from being Angular to mobile, and so it was okay. If you directly jump into it, it's kind of confusing. So we'll start with the different basic components of Ionic, right? Ionic, I'm not going to each of these. It's very easy to, you can go to this link. So what I'll do is at the end of the session, I'll share this slide. I'll put it in slide share. Either you can follow me in Twitter. I'll share this and you can take that. That's fine. So the first set of components, what Ionic gives you is CSS components, right? So I'll give you a quick demo there. All right. So I think okay, it's a little different from what I saw because of the screen resolution. It is now responsive. They changed the layout. So I'm just trying to figure out where each. The way I saw it in the morning, it was all on one side. So one of the CSS components you have here is, let's say, header, right? So this is how you do a header here. And you can, so basically you have to include your Ionic CSS element in your JavaScript. So the different elements are like header, and these are the different options you have for that header, right? Then you have subheaders. So all these are what? CSS components, right? Are you following me here? Then you have a content section where you can see what are the different. So people who are familiar with Bootstrap, you can easily relate it what this is. So you have a footer, you have buttons. So these are all the styles available. But the difference here is what? These buttons and header and footer are all optimized for mobile, not for web, right? This will scale to web. If I open this, it will scale to web, but ideally it's optimized for mobile. So the idea is I'm not going to do each of these because it's very easy. You can go there, all the documents are there, but you'll have an idea what each of these are. So these are the different size buttons. There are some fancy things, icon, so buttons with icon. And this is, it's really easy to create a list, right? Because in mobile, list is a default thing. Most applications would have a list. And one good thing with Ionic is they have given an open source Ionic icons. There are almost like 700 icons. These really good ones. So I mean, even if you're not using Ionic, go take that icons and you can use it in your projects. It's like very rich content set of icons they have. So these are the basic. You can visit this page and you'll understand what are the different elements. So second set of components are what? JS, right? So there are certain functionalities you just can't achieve through CSS, right? So you can, if you want to do a modal, or there are certain things you will need to use some JavaScript scripting to enable that, right? So here Ionic also have another set of components which you can use as JavaScript. So in this case you have a side menu, the side menu that comes out, right? That is a JavaScript library can include. Scroll is one of the biggest challenges any hybrid mobile or a web mobile developer faces. Can you tell me why? See, infinite scroll in the behavior of scroll in a mobile versus web is totally different. Web, the content is, you have a lot of real estate, right? There is so much content area you can have, and you don't need to load all these data into a mobile. See, if there is anyone sitting here who is going to jump into mobile development or who wants to go to do mobile development, there are certain things you need to understand about mobile. Mobile, the problem is it's not always Wi-Fi. It is either 2G or 3G, right? So data is precious, right? You load the data what you need, right? So if you load all the data if your list has like 100 items, you don't want to load all 100. You have to load what is visible to the user in that real estate, right? What is available to you. So that scroll as such is a big challenge. There are a lot of libraries available out there to do a infinite scroll, right? Infinite scroll is basically what Facebook has. Like you can scroll as and when you reach the bottom. You can write your own. It's very easy to write. I mean, you just find that media area when it reaches this percentage of it, you fire another API, you load it. But these guys have already done that for you, right? So you can include that JavaScript. You can't do this with just CSS, correct? Am I right? So that is why you need, similarly for a modal. So the modals of web is different from modal for. So what with the modal, what do? There are certain basic functionalities you need to implement. Tap to cancel. Like you tap outside to cancel, or there is a cross on the top right or left. These are basic things. As a developer, every time you don't want to go and do this, so they expose it for you, right? So then another one is action sheets, which comes on the bottom of the, like in keyboards, right? So all those things you need. So I'll just show you a few of them. So you have action sheet here. I think, yeah, so this is basically the action sheet. So you include this, you can see that. So then let's say slide box. They don't. I don't think they have a demo. Yeah, they have. So this kind of transition, right? I mean, these are default expectations. This is the problem with web. Web always follows native. It's not the other way around, because iOS dictates how their user interface is, right? Or Android dictates what their new material design is. It's not the W3C who decides that. And immediately, as an end user who doesn't know any of this, wants to have an app which gives that experience. So web is always one step behind following this. So you're always in a struggle to implement something like this, or action sheet or something like that. And every time as a developer, spending time to do that is a problem, right? Now, how do you do this? I mean, this is any web developer. I mean, can you think how you can do this? I mean, you can easily do this. You have to use animations, right? You need to use animations, right? And it takes time to do this. And the problem with animations, if you screw up, your mobile battery is going to drain, big time, right? So you have to be very careful. I'm getting into this. I'll talk about how do you the performance optimization factors while you build. I'll get into that. It's a big topic, but I'll just browse through that. Right. So these are the difference. So the whole idea is, again, I'm not going to how to implement all this. This is quite easy. The only idea is you have to go. You should know. The thing is, everything that's available in iOS is available here as well. So you can go ahead and if anyone, even there is pull to refresh. So you can do pull to refresh. So we have built one app. You can go to our showcase and you can download. I mean, there's a pull to refresh. You will really don't know the difference between this native or this web, right? Then, and on top of it, there are open source items as well. I mean, community contributed items as well. Is there anything interesting? Yeah, I mean, tap is always a problem. You know what is the problem with the tap? Anyone? The world of mobile development, especially when it comes to hybrid or web mobile development. See, all the web browsers are by default has a 3 millisecond tap delay. You know that? So the reason is you have between 2 clicks in your browser, right? If you do 2 clicks within 3 seconds, the second click will not be identified in a web browser. So there is a click delay. That was for what? That was designed for a mouse user, right? What is the problem when you do that in a mobile? Think about playing Angry Bird, and you want to like right? If you do 5 times, only 2 clicks will be registered. Rest will not be registered. You can't play a game, or you can't do it fast enough, right? Or then what other thing that's going to happen is it's going to queue up. The behavior is going to be really bad. So as a developer, you have to catch this tap delay, remove it. You don't want it. So now the problem is my understanding about how mobile browsers came out is it's again a shrinked version of WebKit, right? So it still carries that 3 millisecond delay from the actual browser technology down to a phone, right? So there are libraries like FastClick which you can incorporate into your project, which will eliminate this for you, right? I'll get into it again when we get to the performance part. So I think these guys eliminate that. Oh, sorry, it's not 300 millisecond, not 300 millisecond delay, right? So these guys eliminate that here. All right, so let's get back to the deck. So the last one here is platform customizations. See, an iOS user and an Android user, the user experience expectations are different. Am I right? You cannot force a user to. I'm used to Android for 10 years or 5 years, whatever, right? And if you build a mobile app and deploy to Android and the whole experience looks like iOS, the user will not use it. And that is one challenge because you're writing once and deploying everywhere. You can't write 2 different apps. Then defeats the purpose. So if you are trying to build an application which has to be very focused on the user experience of each platform, I would highly recommend going with native, right? But if you are fine with getting to a compromise, then you can use this. But what Ionic does is Ionic gives you platform identifications. So you can within the platform itself, you can identify if this platform show this tab or show this functionality, right? So the Ionic itself identifies the platform for you. If it is iOS, don't show. If it's an Android, don't show action sheet. Action sheet is for iOS only, right? If there are certain specific features or views which you want to hide from a user, you can definitely use these functionalities, right? Clear? All right. So the last section in before we jump into the demo is Ionic CLI, right? Ionic has a very powerful CLI. CLI is like command line interface. So you can use the command line interface to start a project, install a project, distribute a project, deploy a project. There's a lot of things you can do with Ionic. So once we start the demo, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? So okay, so we'll get to the demo. Before that, how many of you have installed Ionic View and set up an account? Anyone could do it? At least I need a couple of them to do that. So if you can, I mean, so it's going. This thing is going to take time depending upon the internet connection and my laptop's thing. So if you have any questions, we can use this time to discuss, right? While I go through this demo. All right, so. So there are certain things. If you want to start with Ionic development, there are certain things you need to do. You need to have a version of Node.js running in your setup, right? So how many of you don't know about Node.js? Okay, so Node.js is a JavaScript-based, amazing little programming language which runs on a server. So think JavaScript running in server, right? That's an entire 10-hour discussion on its own. But go home, take a look at Node.js. It's very powerful. All right, so I've already installed Node, right? You need npm. I've installed npm. Then I have to install Ionic command line tool, right? So that is why this is going to recognize this command called Ionic. So I have all three basic stuff installed here, right? Now I'll show you how simple it is to create a mobile app, right? So let's start. This is the command to create a mobile app. So there are three basic templates you can start with. You can either do a blank which has nothing, or you can have a mobile app which has a bottom tab, or one with a slider menu. What do you need? Let's do the third one, right? The one with the slider menu. Okay. So all I have to do is Ionic start, give a name for the app, BBG demo, right? Then select the template. What is the template you need? And they have a name. It's called side menu, right? And that's it has to download certain things, and once it is done, so what is it doing now? So let's at the same time go to the folder structure and see what happens. So this is what do you see? So this is the folder it just created, right? And it is creating all this structure. So there are certain things I want you to look into. Let's see. I didn't say anything about Cordova, did I? No. Ionic took all those Cordova latest build, stable build from GitHub, put it in my folder. Clear? Then this config XML is again a Cordova thing, which basically sets the configurations for you. And this is the key thing, www folder. This is where all your HTMLs will live, right? In this case, what? Your UI elements, your JavaScript, all your CSS, everything will be in this folder, right? So www folder. So here, right now, they have put a basic set of CSS and JS which are relevant to the template which we mentioned. In this case, it was what? Side menu template. If you had taken a tab, they would have downloaded a different code base. Now it's your job to go inside this and edit it to whatever you need. Now this is what Ionic is. This is where Ionic is clear. You can totally take this out and put your HTML. Still, this project will run. The key thing to make this a Cordova thing is what? Other plugins that it's out there. You clear? Right. So I think it should be done by now. Yeah. So here they ask you if you want to use Ionic push. So we'll talk about it later. Ionic push is Ionic is enabled push notifications through Ionic platform itself. So for now we'll say no. I'm going to do that. Right. I'm going to show you something very interesting now. Before we continue, right? I'm going to type a command called Ionic serve. Oh, sorry. CD. You know what this is? This is the app we just built. This with the slider menu. This is the basic slide menu template. So your basic version of your app is ready. It's that simple, right? I mean, it even have different navigations, everything built into that. Now you're wondering why is it running on a browser, right? So when you install the relevant plugins and relevant command line tools, right? It also comes with a deployment server, a simple Node.js server. So it is actually running this in a Node.js server and throwing it out to you. So when you're developing, so when you're developing a mobile app using hybrid, there are two stages to it. One is all your native, your web components, then your native components. So I highly advise my team to first develop your web components first, because you don't have to deploy to anything. You can actually develop your entire mobile apps, web features through browser itself, even before getting into mobile. Like things like push notification, camera, and all, you have to use a emulator or something. Everything other than that, getting the data from an API, getting the screen navigation, everything you can do it in like 3 days if you use this. That's it. That's that simple, right? But the catch is you need to know AngularJS, obviously. But that's what it is. Clear, right? So that's stage one. Then once you have a stable version one, you can give this for the next team to work on. They'll include all your other plugins and then go from there. Correct? I mean, any doubt till now? All right, good. Right. So if you see right now, it's running on, it's showing Ionic because it is running on a server. I mean, I have exposed this at this local host. I can give my IP. Any of my team members can now access this and test it out. Right. Another thing is they also have a Safari. I mean, if you use your the tools that you use to develop a mobile app is actually the developer tools of Chrome. Nothing else. That's all you need. Right. Fine. So now let's get to the next version of it. So right now what I've done, I built just the web part of it. Now I have to build it for one specific platform. It could be iOS or Android. So the obvious next step here in our case is to do this. But this command line is smart enough to understand I am using a MacBook, and it has already done the step for me. It has already added the required iOS files into this. If you're using a Windows, you might have to run this, right? So where you can see that is if you go to this folder, if you go to this platforms, you can see that iOS Xcode version is already there. But the difference right now, you're seeing a Hello Cordova, which is not something we did. But it didn't do anything. It didn't build it. It just downloaded the folder structure, the basic Xcode. Now you can double click on this and go to Xcode and work on it. Not now, but that's where it is. Clear? Right. Now we'll go to the next. Next is the critical step where you're going to build the iOS. And this is where I have my fingers crossed. Sometimes my laptop is acting up at this stage. So let's see what happens. I hate red color. Alright, so this is going to change. See, did that change? It was hello world before, right? How did it become? So now it builds the project. Now it is a pure iOS application now. Now the code base for this iOS project is here, not here. It took those HTML files from this www folder, put it in the build process is actually building it, putting and making it, and none of these are Ionic. I mean, you're using the command line, but it's all what Cordova is supposed to do, right? This is what Cordova does for you. Ionic wrapped it up for a clean way of doing it. Their command line tool is much better than Cordova's command line, right? So let's see where we stand in terms of this. All right, so I think we are good, right? So now it's you go to a point where you have built your web. Now you build a project. Now either you can double click on this Xcode project and you go to Xcode, and then you make your changes there, and then test the simulator part. And there is another interesting thing. This we'll see now. Ionic. Let's see. So what I'm doing right now is I'm saying Ionic to open up my iOS emulator and run this in the iOS emulator. I have done nothing, right? I'm just asking you to do this. Let's see. The iOS emulator opened up. Oh, there you go. Something. Sorry, it was already there. It was actually on the. I scrolled to the bottom. Okay. Anyway, so this is not your browser. This is what? This is your iOS emulator, which is part of what? Xcode. Right. Now, how many iOS developers here? How many of you want to jump to hybrid development? Can you develop a simple app faster than this? It might be. It's you have everything out there to get up and running, right? So you have this running. Now you can start distributing it. So this is how simple it is to get started with hybrid mobile application development. Any questions till this point? Yes. All you have to do is you have to set your Android environment here. Eclipse. Set up your Eclipse or Android. The new Android. Yeah. So then the only thing is instead of iOS, you say Android. No. But yeah, obviously your Android environment has to be the JDK. Your JVM has to be the JDK. Everything has to be set up. See here, it's my Mac. Everything is there. So setting up Android is a little more painful. So that initial process is anyway there. So that process is anyway there if you're a Android developer. It is not just for a hybrid app developer. So if you're done with your Android app environment setup, then you are good to go in this case. So there is something different here. I don't have it set up here, so I am not. I mean, from a command line point of view, it's just the exact same thing. There's nothing different. Anything else? I'll start here.
Emulate this Linux system.
Yeah, so they have support for Linux. PhoneGap, you can.
I just tried to do it yesterday, but there was a problem like Xcode build.
Yeah, so you can.
There's a problem like Xcode build.
Yeah, so the thing is with Xcode, you have to have Xcode. That is when the simulator becomes part of Xcode, right? If you can't get that environment up and running, then you have to. So there are, like I said, a lot of dependencies on this, right? So if you're a Windows user, you have very good news because Visual Studio Community Edition has built-in features for Ionic app development. So you just download Visual Studio all these templates, everything is there inside the Visual Studio itself. You can build basic things without even going to command line. So for Windows, it is much more easier right now to use. So actually, Ionic has worked with Visual Studio team to get that, right? So now I'm going to show one more thing. How many of you have your? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, you can convert an existing AngularJS application to Ionic, but the problem there is, I'll show you some sample codes right now. Your problem there is, you will, how do you create a slide menu? You need some coding there, right? So these guys already have it. I would recommend, if you have done it modular, your views will not have business logic, right? In that case, it's very easy. You can reuse your controllers and service. I'm sorry, I'm talking AngularJS here. You can definitely reuse your services and controller section of your AngularJS, and then use the view, rewrite the view only. Unless you have polluted your view with a lot of business logic, then you can't do anything about it. So that is why you keep that difference in concern, right? There's something. This one? This one? Oh, this one here. Okay, so this is the first time the project is built, right? After the first command line. First command is what? This. Sorry, this one here. So it is basically building your. So when you go into this folder, right, you will not see this. The first command will not have a platform code. You show that you've seen that hello Cordova thing, right? You wouldn't see that. Or .xcode. Why it happened to me in the first time itself is because the CLI knows it's running on a Mac, and it knows that I'm going to do probably an iOS, so he just did that. I don't think if you run this on Windows, you will get that. You will have to run the second command. What the second command does is it goes to your GitHub, download this piece of code and write it in there and create the folder structure. Clear? Right. And you know what the third build did, right? Build is actually taking the code inside www folder, put it inside, and then build the iOS project for you. That becomes an executable Xcode project. If you go to the platforms and if you set it up for Android, you would see another platform folder called Android. Clear? Okay, now I'll do this. I'll jump into. Are we running out of time? So now what I'll do is I'll get into a little bit of code here, right? All right, so now I'm going to get into a little bit of Ionic coding. We talked about PhoneGap hybrid. Now I have to do justice to the session, right? We should talk about Ionic. The only thing about Ionic, what we talked here is what? The CLI, nothing else, right? So let's do a little bit of Ionic. So everything for Ionic is, if you know AngularJS, you are in familiar territories right now. If not, you're going to be lost. So everything, this is your basic index.html where everything starts in terms of your HTML. Here you have included all your basic things, like Ionic bundle.js, Ionic CSS, like what I said, what gives you the styles, right? Then what you have Cordova.js is also included. You don't have to do anything. I mean, the Ionic CLI builds this for you, this index.html, right? And then your what else is there? Then you have included your AngularJS scripts, the basic scripts, right? And then this is where the slight difference is for an AngularJS. Here, what you get is an ng view. Instead, it's injecting so there is a difference here. Now, this here is Ion, starts with ION, right? There is no HTML tag that starts with Ion. Well, how is it running there? Okay, people who don't know AngularJS, so if you do, so as a pure HTML developer, aren't you confused? Script should work because all browsers know what script is. Everything else is familiar. And what is this Ion nav thing there? Directives. Right? AngularJS gives us this amazing ability to create directives. So you're teaching what they say. You're teaching the web new tricks. Say for example, you want to write a something called okay, in your web application, right? Everywhere you want your name coming in bold letters and doing some magic, right? Either you can do it every time, or you can simply build a directive called my name fancy or something, right? All you have to do is include that directive in your HTML code and then pass the parameters. In that case, the parameters would be the transition, the color, all those parameters you can pass us. So the idea is a HTML developer can actually, an HTML developer is used to these kind of declarative coding, right? These are all very declarative coding. So you can use this to do that. You're following me, right? So every time you get into one of these, you are into AngularJS directive world. So what Ionic has done is they have created a bunch of directives for you. So you ultimately end up using these directives for each of your things. So that way your view is not polluted with anything else. So see, let's get to this. So this is your basic index to HTML. Now where are the other things? The list. You're wondering where are the list and all, right? This file is only this much. So the list, everything is inside your templates, right? So let's go to the menu page. So this has all those details. And again, if you see, every single thing is a Ionic directive, or rather Angular directive, which Ionic overrode. Right? They reused Angular's directive ability to do. See, that is why this is very powerful. Right? Clear? And this has nothing to do with Cordova. Don't get confused. You're doing nothing with Cordova in this one. This is just hacking AngularJS in a sense, right? So in this menu, see, this is, see this side menu content, right? This was part of that template which we took. So Ion side menu is basically a directive they built, and if you want to add a side menu, all you have to do is what? Put Ionic side menu into your code, and rest of the things is when you're asking where the code is actually for this, that would be in your JS folder, not this one. It will be probably in your library folders. So in your library, you will have Ionic bundle. So just basic AngularJS. Rest of this is what Ionic overrode, which is dependent on this. Clear? Following me? All right, good. Yeah. It will be Cordova. Right. So that is not AngularJS. It's purely Cordova. So where you want to use, you can use that. Right. So where are we now? All right. So I have shown you the different CSS we have used. We have also used some JS components for this. Yeah, but I don't recommend. Why do you have to use jQuery? You have time picker for AngularJS. No. So the problem now is you're including another library, which is dependent on another library. And this jQuery library was not at all designed for mobile. So it's heavy, right? You are carrying too much load. I mean, just for a date picker, you are having a library added, right? Which I don't theoretically recommend. You have to keep this payload as low as possible. Yeah. So if you're coming from a jQuery world and getting into one of this, you have to first unlearn jQuery and relearn AngularJS. So you try to mix both, you're going to screw up big time. Right. So either unlearn, forget about what you know about jQuery, and then I mean that is my recommendation, right? So before all this started, I think 4 years back, I had to develop a mobile app using Hybrid for a very big company. I mean, it was Sears at that time. They wanted to build a mobile app, but they don't want native. They wanted hybrid. And the only framework at that time was jQuery Mobile. So jQuery has their own mobile framework called jQuery Mobile. I mean, jQuery Mobile was an afterthought. They built jQuery and then suddenly they say, let's do jQuery Mobile, right? So jQuery Mobile is dependent on jQuery. Then you have this big library already you need, right? So I think it is getting better now, but jQuery Mobile, you have a lot of issues, right? So another great thing about using AngularJS right now here is, see, I think I forgot to mention this. These are all single page concepts, right? You're only communicating using APIs, and AngularJS is excellent for such communication. If you have API dependent applications, you can use that. So jQuery, if you're using it for a very specific purpose like that, date picker, no, go look for something which Angular. There are a lot of date pickers. Anything, I mean, unless you have to convince me why, I don't think you can. Right. So, and if you can convince me that you have to use jQuery, then I would say don't use Ionic. Just stick to jQuery, write your own CSS, do it. Don't mix. You can build one first version of the app, the second, third versions of the app. When you keep adding complexity to this, it's going to be a problem. Right, now I want to show you one other thing. How many of you have that app ready? Yeah, right? So this is a little more magical, sure. So there is this command called Ionic. Can you launch that app? I'll tell you. Hold on, give me. Okay. Okay, go to that app, and there is a view preview. Go to preview. Type this 55 lowercase a 200 delta 7 lowercase d7. This one here. Can you confirm it? 55a. Okay. Okay. Hit continue. All right. Okay, it's going to. Okay, so anyone, let me know once it is done. All right. So what I have done now. Okay, before I tell what I've done, how do you actually distribute an iOS app to your developers? Test flight. Android, you send it across. How do you distribute your app to your customer who has no idea about test flight? They have to teach them test flight, right? Now, I think the single biggest problem I'm seeing people with iOS development is so controlled. Distribution of the code base is not the code base. Even the sample app is a big pain point, right? So Ionic has solved that problem big time through this Ionic view. All you have to do is once you're done with this, you say Ionic upload, and it gives you this key. Ask your customer to download Ionic view. Ask them to punch in this number, it downloads that app, and you can do everything with that app. And it's, I mean, you can't distribute an app because the thing is, this is running inside another app.
That is because it's running in a web view.
Yes, so this is running inside Ionic view.
It's basically a web view. It's actually a hybrid application. It's actually a mobile web app that is running inside that. That's the reason why you can actually download it.
Exactly.
Right?
For a customer to distribute that code base, right?
Yeah, typically when you are developing in iOS, you'll have compiled application native. So test flight is the best way to do that.
Yes, I mean, see, I'm not saying this is the alternative to test flight.
Yeah.
Right.
Only if you are doing hybrid.
Correct. So no. Let's say, no. Let me tell you a point. In the usual development cycle, what happens is the first week, second week, you're not going to give an app. The customer usually comes and say, hey, I want to see the progress. Where are you? Where do you stand? In an iOS, you have to go through the entire process of building an IP and getting there. Right? In hybrid world, you can get this done like this. I think if you downloaded it, it's still downloading. So that's, I mean, again, you can't do the whole thing because if you look at it, there is no installed app like this in your phone. It is inside another app, right? It is running inside that container. No, like it's not the full app.
Yeah, so when we load this particular app inside this, and if that has permission, so
No,
it's not complete, right?
It's not there.
So I mean, essentially, it's still loading the web view part of it, right?
It's essentially doing that. I mean, no, yeah, that's what I showed you before. No, I haven't used. Pixate is okay. Pixate is what you're talking about. That drag and drop and converting it into a. Yeah, you can do that. That is what I showed you before, right? No, okay. No, yeah, that's what I showed you before, right? Ionic serve, it launches a server. I can give my IP and anyone can launch it. No, this is okay. The link is already there. You can actually host it right now. It's already there. If you type. Yeah, that is my point. You can, instead of a local host, right? You can put it in any server you want. Which is hosted in their server. Ah, okay. I mean, yeah. Correct. So I get that point. So it's if it's inside, it's publicly exposed. Oh, yeah, I got that. Right. So that is how you can distribute your. It's not your official distribution platform, but this is that's what they call Ionic View. Ionic also has a lot of other tools which they provide. I think the Ionic has a creator, the drag and drop feature where you can create a basic app. Then I think that's still in beta. They have Ionic push through. Push notification is a big pain point, especially if you're doing multiple platforms, right? Either you have to use Urban Airship or some of those tools, but if you're using iOS or Android, you have to use their individual setups, right? So you got it, right? So yeah, he is seeing that as an app there with. No, it won't install. No. It looks like, if you see that. Yeah. So it's I think camera, since it is Cordova, I don't think so. It will. I don't think so. Yeah. Ionic what?
When you do Ionic share email.
Oh, Ionic share email. I think Ionic share email, probably I haven't done it. It probably sends a link to. Yeah, it more probably will send a link to that so your friends can see it. I think that's what the feature is. I haven't used it. All right. I think so. Any other questions till now? Right. Fine. So I have few more things to show you. So that is basically, now to edit it is, you need to know a little bit of AngularJS. You get inside, you should know the routing and those basic concepts in AngularJS, and then you should be good to go, right? There are certain things I want to talk about. Like every time I talk about hybrid mobile apps, the first complaint that comes out is you can't get the performance of native. I mean, I have to agree, you can't get, but for a normal application, not all application needs to be heavily performant in that sense, right? Yeah, I mean, the first thing is you don't recommend Ionic or any hybrid framework for all the apps. It's not a silver bullet to solve all your problems. So you have to be very careful. Don't go build a game with this, probably, right? And if you have the resources and have a lot of money and team, go do what Facebook did, right? So there are certain things, if you follow, right, you can easily build a very performant application. So the number one rule is you don't. So JavaScript has this speciality. You can easily screw up JavaScript, right? You can easily write bad JavaScript code. So any developer can write very bad JavaScript code and still it will run. So the most important thing is stick to the best practices of JavaScript. Understand JavaScript properly, right? If you stick to that, you can definitely build a decent performant application. That's the basic thing. to go ahead and use established frameworks. Or if you have a great team, a lot of people out there, go build a framework of your own. Otherwise, go take a good framework. They would have their only job is probably building a good framework. They would have thought about most of the things which you don't think about, right? Go start using that, right? Another thing, a lot of people mess up is animations, like I said. Don't do anything that goes for hardware acceleration. So you can use animate using, let's say, to animate functionality in CSS. Use 200 milliseconds. It keeps animating. It's going to heat up your phone. It's going to drain your battery. You can use, what is that called? Transition functionalities, which will improve. Don't do any 3D animations. If your application has any 3D animation requirements, go native. Because there is no garbage collection, so there is nothing. Your operating system is not able to manage any of your processes. The only thing operating system is managing is what? The WebKit, which is all this thing is running on that WebKit. Your operating system, so natively if you run a code, operating system knows what's happening and it can control certain things. Clear? Now another big challenge is offline capabilities. Right, a lot of people say, hey, how do I do offline capabilities? The de facto thing is local storage, but local storage has inherent issues. There is a maximum limit of how much you can store. Magically, whatever in local storage just gets vanished at some point in time. So there are a lot of other libraries. Again, like I said, there are a lot of libraries out there. Knowing what to use. This one is pretty good. I haven't used, based on my research. People say it's very good. It's called PouchDB. This is by the same team who did CouchDB. Right, so if you have CouchDB in the background, this is super good because there's auto sync. There's push notification already built in. So if you have CouchDB in your backend and PouchDB in your phone, if there is a change in data, it will automatically sync. You don't have to do anything. But even if you don't have CouchDB, you can still use PouchDB, and it just takes care of your race conditions, data synchronizations, and things like that. There is another one that's also coming. I forgot the name, which is. So there are a lot of good libraries coming out which will help you with local storage, right? Watch out for memory leakage. It's very easy to reduce memory leakages. So again, the idea is watch out for the best practices. So another very good library you can use is Crosswalk. How many of you have used Crosswalk? So Crosswalk is you use Crosswalk. Okay, so Crosswalk is it's valid only for Android in that case because it takes care of the issues across browsers. Yeah, Android has thousands of different devices, manufacturers. I don't know how many different browsers are there. Are like so many different browsers. For a user, it is very easy to make any browser a default browser, right? So you would probably develop something for WebKit and it wouldn't work for some other thing. So if you have Crosswalk, it takes care of that. So the idea is knowing that this library exists and don't try to reinvent the wheel. So if you follow some of these basic principles, you should be able to build a high performance application. Now, what are the alternatives to Ionic? I'm talking about Ionic. So Onsen is another similar framework, which is again built on top of AngularJS. So it's very similar. Telrig is a paid platform, which is very good. Again, it is expensive. It's not open source. jQuery mobile is there are a lot of other platforms out there which you can do. I mean, if you don't want to have a dependency on AngularJS, don't use Ionic, right? So that is one thing I don't like about Ionic. It is kind of forcing you to use a framework. But there you can definitely simply go to some light. There is something called Framework 7. There are a lot of other frameworks out there which you can use. But if you look at the community and the fan following, it is Ionic is standing out as number one, right? All right, so remember the first slide I showed you, right? Mark Zuckerberg said the single biggest mistake they did was testing on HTML5. He told that in 2012. Now let's see what he did now, right? So in 2015, Facebook open sourced React Native, and they built 2 of their apps as hybrid apps. So there is a major change in thought process, major change in technology happening in the HTML world. I can guarantee this is the next big thing that's coming up. So React Native is going to be, if what they say is, if they can deliver what they have said, We have already started developing it. It's very interesting. It's very promising. But if what they say is what they can deliver, this is going to be amazing. So I'm not going into details of React Native. I'm not an expert as yet. So I'll tell you what simple concept. React Native is not write once, deploy anywhere. It is learn once. So only your business logic would remain in JavaScript. Everything else is native. So the biggest problem with hybrid development is you're using HTML for your view, right? See the slide menu, all this list, everything is what? HTML running on a WebKit. What React Native did was all these UI elements, they pulled out the native code. See, when you say I need in iOS slide menu, it actually took the iOS code and iOS view. So that complaint of users saying, hey, I am not getting that user experience is taken care of there, right? So it's just released. It's very, I mean, it's very easy to start with something. They have also a command line interface like this. To build a hello world, it is quite easy. But I think there are a few other reasons, not just this. The phones are getting really powerful. So you have in 2012 or 2008, or 9 or 10, you don't have these powerful phones. Now you're talking about at least half of you would have a quad-core processor. At least 1/4 of you would have a octa-core processor running on your phone. So you have enough memory and you have enough performance out there to run a HTML5 or JavaScript-based app, right? So you don't feel that lagginess, you don't feel that performance issue. That is one reason. But the technology landscape has also dramatically improved. So I think we'll see where this goes. So this is, if you have any questions, we can get into that. Feel free to ask questions. There are some, if you go to our showcase, there are certain apps we have done using PhoneGap, Cordova. You can check that out. What else? So the future, as far as hybrid app development is concerned, it's quite bright. A lot of requirements, especially there is this. A lot of people are following what you call MVPs, minimum viable product, right? Build an MVP, go to the market in less than 20 days. For such development, right, to prove your product is what market needs, you don't have to invest too much time. You can build an app and distribute it in different platforms in less than 20 days or less than a month. So people who are following that, and a lot of larger companies have also started adopting it. So any questions? So if you have any questions on this, you can use this email. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll share these details here. If you have anything specific to ask, feel free to ask. And thanks for turning in.
So no questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What is the file size of the output project? Is it comparable to the native output?
I think it is larger.
Larger.
Yeah, it's larger. Okay. But the thing is, okay. So the thing is, you're not downloading anything in real time. It's only the installation part, right? So there's one other. Okay, talking about that, there's one other interesting feature in hybrid apps. Especially, I think React Native supports that. I think Ionic also. You can actually. This is where this is going to beat native apps hands down. You can upgrade your apps without installing it. I mean, there is no native platform which can do that. You hands down. No, not all. No, yeah, you can anything to do with the Java, anything in the www folder, you can. Yes. So you can push. Yeah. So this there. It depends. You just can't do it. You have a platform. Okay, but
and your client is asking for 3 other changes, okay, which actually requires business logic changes. And if you haven't updated your application and you're going to change the JavaScript on the fly, which we can do technically, it is actually against.
I mean, this is not my. Yeah. So the idea is there is ways you can do that, right? And definitely no. So the idea is there's definitely ways you can do that, but it should be probably within the constraints what is put forward there. The idea is you can distribute that without, right? It might not be the entire thing. You might have to do let's say it's really powerful if you want to do an A/B testing. Before testing, right? You want to change the heading and you want to run your analytics. After that, you want to change that heading to something else, and you want to run your user analytics.
If it is a native app.
Net,
If it is an app that is released in the App Store.
Yeah, because App Store guidelines, as per App Store guidelines, we shouldn't be changing the business.
yeah, but this. No. See, I understand. That is why they have a very strict introduction policy into your app store. I understand that.
You can't change the code, JavaScript code that is being interpreted.
Okay. Probably they are right. My point is, I'm not saying. My point is, it's not what you. I mean, there is certain amount of the things you can do. It might not be the entire thing.
Yeah, previously it was not possible, but right now there is a capability that made it possible.
No, I was asking whether you have done it.
No, I haven't done it, but you can definitely do it. I not in the live applications, definitely not. But it's definitely doable. You can do live.
Technically possible. It's no break.
Live, yeah.
I'm just asking whether you have done
Yeah,
it.
personally, I haven't done it. So, anything else? Yeah, but again, WebGL, you have to first check. WebGL is supported in the mobile. If it is,
Sir,
yeah, so it supports but you use WebGL for your 3D animations and all. At that point, then you have probably made a wrong choice of platform.
sir, we are going to build a web application using AngularJS, and we want to use the maximum code into the mobile application using this Ionic framework.
Right.
So, what are the guidelines, or could you say some best practices should be followed in the web application development so that we can reuse into mobile app?
Yeah, good question. So the idea is Angular as such gives you a very decoupled architecture, right? You have a MVP, you can follow that. So my simple advice is ideally you're going to use the same APIs and things like that, I assume. And you probably have very similar functionalities. If somebody has decided to repackage it, I assume they have very similar web and mobile, right? So control your view elements. Don't put too much. You will ultimately will have to rewrite your view. All your templates will have to be rewritten. I mean, there has to be addition, but your controllers and your services. See, you properly use your controller services directives. You can. So the directives you build for web might not be required for mobile. So that is the one you will probably reuse Ionic one. Right. So when do you use a directive? It's something to do with the view, right? Changing something or but everything else is a controller, which is your business logic, and services which interact with your model. Correct. So you can definitely reuse, but you have to put that thought process before you start structuring your. So you have to have a clear separation of layers there. Then you can definitely reuse. There's no problem.
So if you have any questions, you can of course take it offline. And so hope you all enjoyed the session, and thanks Liju for this very informative session.